Oh, and unmute. Hello, Alex. How are
How's it going,
you?
sir? Oh man, I am doing well. Wearing the greatest
Yeah,
rock band of all times T-shirt here with Rush. I know you and me
yeah.
were having a little bit of a spat there with Led Zeppelin, so
Well, was thinking the other day about just since we're not monetizing anyway, just doing some Led Zeppelin as our pre-stream music. But you know, we went with no pre-stream music again because I didn't. But yes, Rush is a great band. But Led Zeppelin is also a great band.
yes.
So,
This is where we
um,
disagree, man. I just can never get into them, but it's all right. That's where it's
yeah,
two Alexes.
yeah. Great. So, I don't know about you. I know you're feeling good. I am exhausted. I stayed up until 3:15 last night playing Factorio because that is what you do.
I don't even know what that is. What is it, an Xbox or is it
It
a
is.
Steam game?
Oh, it's a base building game. It was for a long time the highest rated game on Steam. I'll show you later. Anyway,
Nice.
um, today we are going to talk about security in Power BI. What does that include? We're going to talk about publish to web and alternatives. We're going to talk about RLS and OLS. We are going to talk probably about some it, more advanced nuances of the permission options.
Yeah.
And I think we had a couple items on our list, but that's probably a pretty good start just right there.
Yeah, I mean, if time allows, user owns data versus app owns data scenarios. I know that that's kind of like an interesting, phrase or tagline, but really kind of adding a little bit of clarity there.
Yeah.
AAD versus just pushing someone to a token, kind of letting them in the
Yeah,
circle.
you'll have to teach me on that since inside of Microsoft everybody has a license. We always just use AAD.
Yep, yep.
But that's, um,
A
yeah.
lot, a lot of security. Do you want to kick over to my screen here? We'll just kind of
Yeah.
right into publish to web, kind of all the fun things that I've got going on here that I want to demo.
Yeah, here we've got your screen up now.
Cool. All right, so let me go and zoom in. So publish to web. I know this thing was a nightmare for a lot of kind of Power BI administrators, maybe even some users just not really understanding what it meant. Just anytime that you had content and you wanted to share it, maybe you saw the one that said publish to web or embed in a website, and you're like, yeah, sure, I've got a SharePoint. I'll just go ahead and post it over there. Unfortunately, no license and no authentication, no security. We gave you two different prompts, and then I just saw it happen a lot and a lot. People still using it. Luckily here recently, though, probably within the last, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months, they did update the publish to web. So now by default, it allows only existing codes. So any new codes would not go through unless it was applied to like maybe a specific security group. So in that example, maybe it was like IT led. They've reviewed the models, going to be posted on an external website. Maybe it was like, I don't know, stock results, whatever it may be, or did something good in the community, kind of like the COVID-19 results. But traditionally, it was a nightmare. You can still go out and see what was available. Just go to the embed codes here on the left-hand side of your Power BI tenant. And this will give you a good idea of just anything that's still out there.
Yeah. There's another way to see what's still out there. I'm going to share my screen.
Yeah, good.
So apparently it doesn't work on Bing, but if you go to Google and search app.powerbi.com, you can see all of the publish to web dashboards.
Oh my goodness.
Just pages and pages of publish to web dashboards. So not all of these are published to web dashboards, but like, here's an example, someone's COVID-19 dashboard. Just click that and look. I'm looking at a report. This seems like a great use of publish to web, but I think if I go back, this one, I don't know if that's such a great use of publish to web. Yeah.
Yeah, let's avoid clicking it. Yeah,
I'll
so
go back
as
to
you,
your screen now.
and Microsoft does have that kind of within the verbiage at least, where it says, hey, we do reserve the right to expose these to the web just within our data stories galleries. So that's where we're always like hesitant, like don't use that use secure method or go out here and remove everything that's possibly listed. So
Yeah, Laura's totally right. You can add the word confidential to that search, and there are lots of results.
oh goodness, I don't even want to know. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then let me show you why this is, such top of mind here. I'll go ahead and do maybe just this St. Louis kind of BI report. So I'm going to view on web. We're going to see it out here now, and get rid of that banner. Get out of here. I don't want it pinned.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. There we go. So just a report I'd kind of build, just showing some local kind of craft brews. Something I want to do though, I'm going to go to just my web browser here. So press F12. This will get me into just Google Chrome. So looking at elements, looking at network. I'm going to send just a refresh here on the page just so I can get everything to cycle through again within Power BI. Cool. So we can see all these different elements, Power BI portal, kind of the different trackings. We'll just let it continue to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this. Just David Eldersveld had kind of showed me this, and I thought it was so fascinating. So let's type in.
Hey Alex, let's do some zoom in on this. And unlike with the other day on Zoom, it'll actually work.
Oh, I was dying. It's like, how do you even use this thing? So conceptual schema is what I look for. I can see that the name here is Beer St. Louis, which is correct for my entities. I can keep going through. So capabilities now. So is Q&A enabled? So can I ask natural language querying here of my report? Yeah, that's true. Supports Q&A, true. Substrings, scope to val, aggregates. Interesting. My entities. I can see here my table. I can see the various properties. So I can see my brewery name. So I can now actually see the columns, maybe my measures here, format strings. So all of my schema is just out here on the web.
And once you know the schema, you can inject filters into the report. Since URL filter parameters are supported, and you can actually, like, even if you think, oh hey, this data, like the granular data is sensitive, but once I aggregate it, it's totally fine. Well, guess what? Folks can see your granular data if they really want to.
Yep. So looking at model now as opposed to schema, here's my database name, so the unique GUID that was generated. If I was to kind of go to exploration, I can see my reports. Click in here. I can see the owner information, so I can see my email address that I was the one who authenticated my user object ID from AAD. I can see my email address that I published this. So all of this information is available.
Yeah.
Kind of going over to our data stories gallery. So once again, we're publishing to web. We're giving Microsoft the availability to do so here. So if I was I'll just jump into airport authority, performance summary. Generating this now here for us. 12, again, here we're gonna go to our network tab, just at the very top. I'm gonna do a refresh on my page again. Just now that I have everything kind of up and running, it's tracing. I'll go to schema, whenever this gets done. Conceptual schema. Let's zoom in here now. There's our model. Date table templates, my entities, those local date tables, so I can already see auto date time is still enabled. All the information here. Type in model.
Yeah.
Let's do our model expiration. Expiration again. My reports.
And so you can also find hidden report pages this way, right? Because once you get a list of objects of the report, you can change the GUIDs that are being called in the request as well.
Yep. So DB name, I've got that information. I've got the email address. Especially where I just think like all this is concerning is just through the data stories gallery. Let me just type in wrestling with data. I'll find my report.
Yeah, wrestling is very concerning, Alex.
would agree. Just out here,
Yeah.
you can download this PBIX. So, I mean, this is just calling that. Let me go ahead and copy this. Maybe I'll copy the link.
Is every data storage gallery entry let you download the PBIX, or
that's a toggle. But if you just go out and collect the metadata, you can go out and force it out, right?
oh, so if just a regular published web report, you can actually get the PBIX.
Yeah. So I mean, right out here, I can go out and just click on this. I think you might need to reverse engineer a few things, at least in terms of the kind of this just random GUID.
But those are in the metadata we just looked at.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you have a long weekend, you want to reverse engineer and go out and download people's PBIXs. I don't know. It's kind of concerning.
Yeah.
So let's jump back then, right? So back to our portal, back to sharing content. We'll do our reports.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to share this now to the web, just through an embed website or portal. So this will be just kind of the secure method. So here's a secure embed link. I'm going to copy this, open a new private browser, paste it in over here. Ask me to authenticate. You press F12. We're going to recycle here once again. So just Control R, network. Schema, nothing. Model,
Well, you haven't.
nothing.
Yeah.
So this is just the Power BI service, but
Right. And not until you
nothing
sign
generated.
in. Right.
Exactly. Pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is pretty wild. Like, I mean, it makes sense that we wouldn't have major workarounds to the core licensing model in the product, but also this is quite the stumbling block. So, as a result, as of a few months ago, I don't remember when, the new default tenant setting is that publish to web is just disabled. And now as a tenant admin, you can specify users that are allowed to publish to web, in addition to the like scary pop-up when you try and do it. So this is a new thing. So you have probably had Power BI in your tenant since before. And so you may want to consider disabling publish to web.
Yeah. And going through anything that is still outstanding, at least within the embedded kind of gallery there within your tenant settings, and then first and foremost, notify the owners, hey, I've taken this thing down. And then do your users need a pro license assignment, or can we back it by premium capacity just for the free viewing?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'll just be getting a lot of nasty grams from everyone saying, hey, my reports don't work anymore. It's like, well, it's because you had them publicly exposed. I did a Google search. I was able to find your report. I was able to reverse engineer it here just through the metadata. Yeah, but it's all very concerning and fascinating.
Yeah. So
let's kick it over to you then. Let's do actual data set.
Yeah, so let's talk about row-level security for a little bit, because this is one of the alternatives to how to disable the option to download the PBIX file but still allow export to Excel. Let's see. So there's actually a really easy way to do this. So both permissions are tied to the build permission. So let me go to my screen, and instead of going into RLS, let's talk a bit about Power BI permissions. Let's just start here with the build permit with the permissions. So actually,
go down.
I want to start with just the list of permissions.
Yeah, type in workspace permissions.
Yeah, workspace roles. Yeah, this is
because they have an
the
awesome
thing.
matrix out there.
Yeah, They do. I've even submitted a pull request to have something added. This line, I had added a thing about that line. So there's sort of 4 roles, and this is also a good introduction to row-level security. And so your admins are your workspace owners. And then your members can basically do everything except create other admins. And your contributors can do a lot of things. They can publish change, they can access the workspace. And they can change security settings on the report. So RLS is not enforced on the contributor. So the only role that is allowed that can look at a report and have RLS enforced is the viewer. And so if you have if you want to add someone to a workspace and you need them to their experience to be secured and not have full access to the data, they need to be a viewer. And then when you share an app with somebody, they basically get the view. They don't get this permission. They just get the view and interact with an item permission, and that's it. Okay, so then if we go to the build permission, what does the build permission do? This permission allows users to create. So this is set not on a workspace, but on a particular data set. And so you can apply these to users or groups. It lets them export data. It lets them build new content on the data set. It lets them connect via XMLA. And I'm pretty sure this is also the permission they need to download the PBIX. It looks like my camera has overheated. So I'm just going to go blank for a little bit while it cools down. So there's no direct way to decouple these permissions. However, to answer Fernando's question, there are features that block the downloading of PBIXs by anybody. If you enable incremental refresh, or do literally anything to your model using the XMLA write endpoint, even if you just like edit it and then change it back, you will never be able to download a PBIX from that model ever again, for any reason. And so if you wanted to give someone the build permission but not let them download the PBIX, just throw incremental refresh on a table and don't have the parameters go point anywhere. Or if you don't even have to leave it in permanent premium capacity. If you just have an ASCII that you can turn on for 5 minutes, turn it on, pop in tabular editor, rename a measure, change the name back, you're done. And now people can't download the PBIX. Neither can you, but it's had the outcome that you're looking for there.
Yeah,
so,
unfortunately, that's just not a tenant setting at the moment to disable the download of PBIXs. I think because people are still building a lot of content in like one single model, like they're building the report pages and their data set and everything else, and it's like, oh, don't do that. Disconnect everything as much as you can.
Yeah. While we're talking about these permissions, there's another interesting nuance that I've discovered about the build permission and the XMLA endpoint. I don't have a good data set where I'm not an admin to be able to demo this. But what we found was that while the build permission allows you to connect to the XMLA endpoint, if you just have the viewer role and not the contributor plus roles, you can't execute discover DMVs, which means discover DMVs, it turns out, are really important to UIs of tools. So I'm just going to open up SSMS and I'll just connect to this one. Okay, so when I go ahead and sign in DAX Studio, guess what it's doing after it connects to populate the drop-down of databases, the list of tables, and the model. It's running discover DMVs. And it can't do this without those permissions. So if you just have the viewer role, this will just fail to connect. It won't be able to do it at all. because the whole it'll just error out because that's how it's been designed. It's a little bit better in SQL Server. You can't just connect without specifying a database, because when you try to connect, it's similarly going to use a Discover DMV to find the databases. However, what you could maybe do is come in here and specify a database this way. But guess what? This also uses a Discover DMV. So it also doesn't work. However, what we found that you can do is there's a parameter you can add at the end here. I have to look it up in my stuff. So let me just unshare my screen while I go find it in my notes that are private. But you can add the database name to this string, and if you add it there, then you can connect using SQL Server, and you can write DAX queries. But guess what? There's no Object Explorer in SSMS. And so you don't get IntelliSense or an Object Explorer to write those DAX queries and that you might expect from DAX Studio.
Oh, it's tough.
So,
but, I mean, especially if you're in like a closed environment where they don't allow DAX Studio. I mean, you just gotta commit a lot of that stuff to memory, or just save another file that has everything kind of written out for you.
Yeah. So this is something I've spoken with Christian about, and I know that they're thinking about adding a little more nuance to these permissions. But the way it works today, like the view permission and the build permission sort of interact orthogonally. So, and just to loop back, you need to use the viewer role in order to be able to connect to in order to enforce row level security. So let's see if I've got my little presentation on how to connect. Yeah. So here.
Let me kick over your screen again.
Yeah. Let me bring up. I don't want to show this presentation, so I need to bring it up in Notepad or something first. Okay. Yeah, we can share now. So this is the traditional URL. You've got your name of your workspace, and then if you want to specify a data set on top of that, you can put :initial catalog, and then this will specify the starting database. And then once you've done that, SSMS will successfully connect in without the contributor plus roles. So that is my sort of nuanced, deep explanation of what all is going on with the XML endpoint and the build permission.
Go back to your notepad here for me, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Let me pull that back up. And let's just
something that I've been having to deal with here a little bit. If you go full screen on that for me, or at least on the notepad, or
is that full enough for you?
Awesome. The my org. If you're doing cross domain, hold on. It's not just me. Somebody was saying that they're having issues with the audio and video.
Let me look at.
Let's see then.
Our signal looks good. That's very interesting.
Oh, I'll give it a pause there first.
When you say I'm in, do you mean that you can hear us?
Yeah, let us know before we kind of proceed here for everyone.
Oh,
cool.
I turned on monitoring through YouTube, and I can hear us.
Awesome. So at least on the server here, some of the things I've had to kind of look into lately is just like cross-tenant connectivity. So in the Power BI, the my org, that just defaults to your current organization. But if you actually change that to, like in my example, Power BI Champs, then I can then be part of Microsoft, but connect to the XML endpoint over in another kind of tenant. So if you are having to do cross-tenant connectivity to data sets, the XML endpoint. That might work.
There's another type of gotcha in this XMLA while we're on this tangent about the XMLA endpoint. Workspace names are not required to be unique, and this is a workspace name. So if your workspace name is not unique, which we've run into a few times, you can take your workspace GUID and add it after a hyphen, and that will disambiguate this connection string. I think it's in the documentation somewhere, but
Lessons learned.
yeah. It took a little bit to figure that out, but it's really nice that by default you don't need any GUIDs at all. This is like a human readable connection string.
Yep.
So, okay. Well, I think we've covered what I wanted to talk about the various permissions in a workspace. The next piece is talking about, okay, you've given your users the build permission, or you want to control the data using row level security. Let's just open up a blank Power BI, and we've got, I think, enough time to do this whole demo here. So I'm just going to create a simple table. Let's just do color, red, green, blue, okay. And then let's do over here, fact, right, okay, great. So now we've got a very simple data set. I'm going to load this. Okay. So, what if we want, and then let me actually do one more thing on this data set here. So, let's say we've got one person who has for each color. So, Alex, no.
How many Alexes are in this company?
Yeah. Okay. So great. So now we've got our 3 Alexes, and let me hit apply changes. And so what if we want to say various people can only access here? Okay. So the way this works is if we come into manage roles, and I can create a role which says, so for now we're not even going to use the people. We're just going to say blue people. Okay. And then the rule here is these people can see the data when table, there's no IntelliSense here, but fortunately equals, nope, color equals blue. And I need to put this in quotes. And so now, if I'm in the blue role, I'll only see blue. It doesn't respond to person at all. So that's the first thing. And if we want to test this here, we can come in and say, okay, now I'm a blue person. And now the person with the PBIX can always bypass the roles. But once we've published and put people in the blue people role, now this is what they see. Yeah. Let's see. Is it Control 4 for live Zoom? Yeah. So let me just go back through what we did. So we made a simple equality statement. It's really any DAX expression that evaluates to true or false. So you can use any sorts of lookups or whatever. It's just it has to evaluate to true or false.
You might need to scroll down a little bit more. Seems like a screen maybe be a little shifted. Go to the right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And then I'm always kind of curious too, especially when you just talk about RLS, because it's not like overcomplicating. It's literally just, is this true or is this false? So where do you kind of stand? Like, because I'm getting ready to have this conversation, at least
Yeah.
kind of coming up here soon. But whose responsibility is it for security? Is it Power BI? You know, Power BI should secure everything and just secure. And then we get down to the data set level. You're the developer. You're building this thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think,
Because the first level of authentication is getting into the service, right?
yeah.
And then getting into a workspace. And then another security layer of getting into, you know, report, maybe
Right.
dashboard, data set, etc. So we're like 3 security layers deep.
Yeah.
You know, maybe number 4 is kind of on to the next thing.
Yeah. Well, so I think one of the questions, and I think this is the question you're asking, is so I've got some granular role, like row level or data level security roles. Do I want to enforce those in Power BI, or I've already configured them in my data source? Do I want to use the roles from my data source? And I would say, generally speaking, you want to do it in Power BI because you want to, like, you don't want to handcuff yourself to direct query. Like, it's a good tool to have, and it brings some really exciting capabilities, but if you decide we are only going to use the security roles in our data set, that means, or in our SQL server, that means you're now using direct query for everything. And
You got it.
You better be prepared for that decision, because now you need a lot of capabilities, and, you know, you're never going to get the super nice performance experience that you might get with import mode. And setting these rules up are really not that complicated. So, Theo, you're leading us to the next piece here. So let me just go ahead and publish this report. So let me save it to my desktop, and we're going to call this RLS.
You know, at least kind of in theory and practice here, responsibility of security is on the developer of the model. Yeah. So it's either importing everything that they have security for, and then assigning permissions throughout the various layers. So through the app, you know, workspace, whatever it may be, however they're kind of sharing the content. But it's no different than if I was to ask, you know, how are you sharing an Excel file today?
Yeah.
Well, we pull out certain rows, we do certain things. You have to apply those same principles or practices over here too. It's either least privilege based on row level security. You know, am I a user that's authenticated for this true false statement, or am I going to leverage direct query at the data source level? They have this access. So that's where, I mean, you need to make the decision up front, but ideally the responsibility is the developer.
So once you have published, you can come to it in your workspace, and in this thing you have this security option, and this is where you configure RLS. And the way this works is it fails safe. So for users where RLS is enforced, which we already talked about, just to recap, workspace admins, members, and contributors, RLS is never enforced under any circumstance. But if you share a report with someone as a viewer, or you share the report using sharing but don't give them app workspace permissions, or if you create an app and share the app with them, RLS will apply things, will apply to the users. So, but if you share, so then once you have a user that is, RLS is being enforced against, if they're not in a role, the report will error out. Every visual will return, cannot generate security context. They'll still see the report background and like they'll see the report, whereas if you hadn't shared the report with them at all, they wouldn't get anything. But if they're not in a role, they won't see any data. So if we just go ahead and add Alex Powers to this role, now when he looks at this report, he'll see blue people. And if I go and test as role, so let me save this. So now we can test in the service, and now we can actually test with AAD. And so when we come in here and now we're viewing as blue people, but I can instead enter Alex Powers again, and apparently there are 2 Alex Powers now. So now I'm seeing from Alex's context, and again, he's in the blue person role, so he sees nothing. By contrast, if I put in my name here and hit apply, I see everything because I own this report. So even though I'm not in a role, row level security says he could change security whenever he wants, so we're just not going to bother trying to secure for him.
So it's not just simply I'm going to publish and share. It's I'm going to publish, I'm going to go out and start testing security, I'm going to ensure things work, and then I'm going to actually go out and share.
Yeah. So let's talk about the next layer here, because you can do even more. So I'm going to edit my example more, and so I'm just going to add green. And so one of the downsides to this approach is like we would need to create a role for every, like we could end up with a lot of roles, but we can make RLS dynamic, and that's what this person column is for. So here I'm going to do 5, 6, and 7, and then I'm going to say Alex P, Alex D, and in fact, I'm not going to use this anymore. I'm going to switch, because we're going to demo this here, so I'm actually going to switch to Alex and I's email address. So let me get your alias, Alex.
AL Powers.
Yeah, same Powers. So this is like our AAID identifier here.
And if you have a different mapping, you can change like the UPN too, but we're pretty straightforward here.
So here we've got this outcome here. I switched, and so we won't get quite the outcome that I want. So now I've got this, and I'm just going to apply this and come into my report. So now it's really simple here let's actually add one more thing here. I'm going to add one more column for the next example. Flag. And so I'm just going to flag I'm going to flag just this one row here. Okay. And so now I can change let me stop this. If I come into manage roles, and let's get some zoom in action again. Okay, so now instead of using this type of role, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say there's this function user
principal name,
yeah. Rather than tempt fate with my spelling, let's
I think we all do that.
Let's do this. Let's just open a blank DAX Studio that's connected to our local model here, and then I don't have to use zoom it. So now oh, look at that. That's so much nicer. User principal name equals table dot person. And so this will be true for rows if we take and we evaluate user principal name. So if we create a new measure, UPN, user principal name, let's just bring this in here as a card. You'll see in this context, it's evaluating as my local system. But in the service, it'll evaluate as their AAID user. And similarly, there's the username function. And this, I think, will always evaluate. Like, you should try them both to get the behavior that you want. That's my advice on those.
Username, though, they were depreciating at one time in favor of the user principal name.
Yeah. So now we've got our role here. And so I'm going to paste this in here. And so now when I view as, I'm going to view as Alex Powers. And now what I see,
Did you paste in the rule?
I did paste in the rule. Let me just. That's very interesting. Did I? Oh, right. When you're in here, you have to check both. So I'm testing the regular user's role with the name Alex, with the name. Because it doesn't know who's in what roles here. So now that it knows what role to apply, it says, oh, okay, well, Alex can see one green sail and one red sail. And he can see the person on that. So now someone asked if we can use an OR parameter. So I'm going to do that next. So we'll come back to Dex Studio, and we can say user principal name equals this, or we had our last column that we added, flag equals 1. And so now if we come back, we update our rule. And what is the error message? That's very interesting. Oh, I bet. Because I entered data and I didn't apply a step. It's a string. And so it's not doing implicit type conversion. So now the one row that we added the flag to, blue 7, we can see that as well. Conversely,
I'd be curious. Did you see kind of Marco's article here recently in regards to kind of RLS and lookup value? He was kind of talking about very complex, like 7-column lookups and just the performance hit that was coming along with these for, enabling security.
Yeah, we have some of that going on in our model. You can definitely, like, what we have in our design is I've got a table of salespeople's assignments to accounts. And the accounts map to the facts. And so if a salesperson comes in, they can see accounts they're assigned to. But then I have a bunch of sales operations folks that are like given access to like an M3's book, right? They're not on RBI, they're not assigned to accounts, but they help manage the operations for like a whole team. And so we have another table that says if Joe accesses the report, give him the perspective of VP Sally. And so it uses lookup value to go fetch those names. And then we have other rules, like if they're a business analyst that is in the security group to access the database or this particular database, just don't filter the table at all. And so we go look up that. And so it's if username equals security.alias or lookup value username delegate alias equals security.alias, or if username is in this table, then true. That's the types of rules that we use on our model. I don't think that's where we get our performance hit. We are having some performance issues, but I don't think that's the big problem. I think the big problem more has to do with what we talked about in the bonus string about having a key with 250 million unique values. But yeah, that's a common thing.
And it's something to think about, though, is if there is like a combination of kind of columns that you're looking at and there is some sort of pattern, the Vertipack engine kind of analysis services loves integers. So if you could convert those kind of text strings into maybe integer-based combinations, a lot better.
Yeah. So I also wanted to elaborate a little bit more on this Kerberos point that you answered, which is to say Kerberos just works if you're using direct query. If you're using import mode, Kerberos just works for your authors. So they connect to your data source through the gateway, which is fantastic, and everyone always wants to use it, and that's why we're not going to do a show on it, because it just works. But once they connect to the data source through the gateway and download the data to their PBIX, and they share their report, there's no Kerberos that their end users are connecting. They're looking at the data that's been downloaded into that PBIX, and it's not going back to your server to look up which rows it can show. So that's why when we were talking about, like, yes, you could use this data, the security in your source, but you want to do it in Power BI too, even if you've got it in your source, and like put out like a best practices document on, like, here's the row level of security you'll use. You will consume these 2 tables and create these 3 relationships and imply this rule if you're going to consume this table. That's really simple, and we've shown how simple the code on even complicated rules are. And so putting out a presentation that's like that says, if you want to share quota data, you must follow these things from our data warehouse, like, that's not a super hard thing to do. So, okay, we've talked through row level security. The last thing I wanted...
Sorry, go ahead. Chat, somebody had asked, is perspective security?
Yeah, no, perspectives are not security.
Not security.
Yeah, not security. Perspectives basically is a fancier version of hide table. And guess what? Even when you connect to someone else's data set, you can unhide all and see stuff. That's actually another good point, which is that, like, if you've got some complicated stuff in your model, and you want to just like make the users not have to think about it and trust your DAX, then you can hide lots of objects, but they can always come in DAX Studio and like see your hidden objects, right? Like Power BI says, you don't need to know about this table. You just use the dates. But guess what? I can access it here. Perspectives is basically the same thing. It's a different property, but it's similar levels of security. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is object level security. So let's have a new hypothetical. I'm going to have another table, and I'm just going to have my colors, and I'm going to remove duplicates. So we're going to create a relationship here, and then I'm going to duplicate this table, and I'm going to choose my columns. I'm just going to have color and fact, and on the fact table, so now I can do group by and have my sum of fact equals count. Yep, totally. That's what we're going to do. These are great defaults. We're going to call this detail. We're going to call this dim, and we're going to call this ag. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to mimic object level security. So object level security is if you say, hey, I want people to be able to see the sales by color, but I don't want them to be able to see sales by person, right? And so what we're going to do is I'm going to
and we're living in conceptual land now, right, Alex? Like OLS is not currently supported within Power BI.
Yeah, exactly. There's no OLS in Power BI. There's lots of folks that does. Yeah, perspectives feel like column level security, except that users can bypass it, so it's actually not security. So now I'm going to have regular users and flag users, which are special. And so regular users just can't see the detail table at all. This is just going to be false. And flag users, we're not going to apply any security to them. We can just do this. I'm trying to remember how this works. I've definitely done this before.
Zoom in. What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to make a rule that's just not true, ever.
False?
Yeah.
Typing it right?
Uh,
FALSE?
yeah. Let's do this.
You had to spell right. You were wrong there in the spelling.
Yeah. Flas. Yeah, it's always flas. Okay, so these users will never be able to see this table. And now here, these users, I'm not going to put any rules on them at all. Okay, so now, hey, I'm a regular user. I can't see this table at all, but I can see the sum of count on this table because, that's what we want. And so and let's just make this a little matrix. So
Basically, you're just defining the entire table as false.
Yeah.
In the evaluation.
And now what I want to do is I'm going to come in. Oh, look, it made my relationships for me. We're never using this. So let's go ahead and make this the correct. Nope. Many to one. Great. Okay. So now I've got this. I'm going to want to hide color from these tables because I don't want my users to use this dimension because it doesn't interrelate. So I'm going to replace here like this. Okay. And now we're going to create a new measure. So let's go into here. So what we're going to do is sum of count, because this is what we're now calling our measure. And what we're going to do is we're going to first ask, is color filtered? And the way we're going to do that is filtered. And actually what I prefer to do is cross-filtered, because this lets you specify a whole table as opposed to an individual column. There's some extra things to think about, but and then what we're going to do here is we're going to specify our dim, and no, in this example is filtered. We only want to do detail because I didn't create a second dim for person. Normally you'd have a second dim for person. And so now if this is filtered, and now we're going to say if, so now we're going to have another var, which is results equals if, and I'm using more verbose with variables, which I need to specify here because then we're going to do the sum of detail, because in order to resolve my query, I need the detail table. And if not, I'm going to do the sum of my ag table count, right? Because we've got great naming here. And then we're going to return our results. Okay, so now format our query. Great. And now if I create a new measure here for results, and I bring this in instead of count, and I bring this in here. Yeah. So let's see if I've got this right now. So now here, these are working just fine. I got the same number for both. And if this one, if I add person, I get nothing, but I can still see the total, right? So if I drill down under person, I can't see the people, but I can see the correct counts here. If I stop viewing under role, I'll have a different experience, which is I can see the breakdown. So this is object level security, but you need lots of tables to do it. And so it can be very data expensive. And this also lets you specify some levels of aggregates that folks can see on your fact. It's better for fact security than for dimension security. Like if you wanted to hide the names of the people, it's more complicated to do. But this is a good alternative to most use cases for OLS.
Yeah, at least until it gets there, within the product.
Yeah.
Hopefully then we can start like unraveling
Yeah.
some of the workarounds of the past.
And OLS is on the list they've published of AS parity features that they want to do. It's not on the public roadmap yet, but I know that checking that list off is fairly high priority. So
yeah.
I think we're going to get a new roadmap soon, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it on there. But
I mean, I think translations is quasi-supported sometimes. I would have to take a look.
Yeah, I think this is one of these things where desktop doesn't quite do it, but maybe the service does it better. I don't know.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. User owns data versus app owns data. Should we talk about that? Kind of wrap up here?
I don't know if we can cover that in 5 minutes.
I can cover it pretty quick.
Okay. I guess I can't cover it in 5 minutes because I don't know anything about it. Do you want me to share your screen or just talk?
Yeah, go ahead and share my screen. Cool. All right. So user owns data. Kind of out here in the service, we've talked about just as we log in with our credentials. So AAD. My example, just I'm out in my own personal tenant, Alex M. Powers. It's not about to sell. This is how I am a user. I now get access based on what I have permissions to view. So my various workspaces, my data sets, and then also kind of the RLS. So I'm Alex Powers. Whenever I go into an authentication, somebody adds me. I am this user. I can see this, row level detail based upon the security that was provisioned for me. So that's great. In a app owns data scenario, so this would be Power BI embedded. I'll go over here to the kind of the playground. So if you've not been over here before, definitely a pretty cool place to just come over and check out every once in a while. I'll just go to sample 2. I'll do the simple visual, try it. Select token type. So I either have an embed token or I can use my AAD. So like in our previous example, there's no tokens being issued. It's how are you authenticating into the service? That's what will give you kind of access and permissions to. But in this example, I'll do an embed token. I'll do a run. And then we'll scale it maybe just a little bit. Why that visual is so bad. Up here at the top, though, I've built the next billion-dollar phone app. It's a flying cats rental. Whenever you log into that mobile phone app, I'm going to issue you a token to say, yes, this person authenticated in. Here's now their token so that they can see the actual report being generated and rendered. So I'm just going to leverage the Power BI analytical engine, the viewing experience here, visuals. And then from there, it's my app, it's my experience. There is no Microsoft branding, there's no Power BI logo, etc. And then I can also just make changes or edits.
Yeah, and there's a lot of depth to what you can embed, right? Like you can do single visuals and you can add menu items. Like you have a lot of control, and it can be almost like a full-time job just getting the most out of the embed functionality.
So like this example, it's just JavaScript SDK. I've got my Power BI kind of visual experience here on the right. Over here on the left, this is nothing that's native to Power BI, but I can now start interacting with Power BI through my app. So I can really create those custom pro hardcore devs, .NET, etc. Coming over here and editing these things. Kind of another example here, insight to action. Like we don't have these things within the Power BI service, but if we come out here,
Can we get some zoom in on that? I've actually never seen this before. So
yeah.
I wanna...
So whenever I see kind of, let me hover above here. Start campaign. So I'm on a table now. I'm going to start this campaign.
Okay.
And now get this pop-up where I can send offers, send coupons, send discounts, whatever it may be.
Oh, that's fancy. I think I saw this in like a presentation sometime. But yeah.
So things like this aren't available in the Power BI service, but If I want to do the pro dev side, if I want to build something into the reports, maybe with kind of this campaign distribution as an example, we'll just send it, send coupon, title, special offer, blah, blah, blah. We're injecting the customer name, send. We're taking action now with our data. It's pretty wild, though.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot here. Cool.
So that's the difference, too. So user owns data is AAD. Maybe like more like application, your own custom dev. App owns data. Just issue an embed token. And then you can pass filters through after the embed token as well.
And I think like this is how I like to think about the difference between PSKUs and ASKUs, which is that like anytime you're logging in with AAD, you probably need a PSKU. So like use the AAD option here, which I guess is app owns data. User owns data. That requires pro licenses or PSKUs, and it's the embed token, which you can use those ASKUs, which are
and you can still do embedding with PSKUs as well.
Right.
So if you want to build a custom application for your organization, you can still do it.
Yeah, PSKUs can do everything.
Yeah, Adam's commenting here too. Yeah, you can pretty much do anything. And if this is something that people are interested in, just documentation, they've got a lot out here. And then they also have Power BI Developer in a Day course that's available too. It's just self-paced, self-guided. But that's just another awesome resource.
Yeah.
If you kind of enjoy that.
And Adam, I think that's probably why I've never really learned real coding, is because I like pushing against constraints, and I just feel like there'll be too many options if I actually learn how to write some C#.
I always just look at it, I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to deal with JavaScript again.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of cool things out here.
Yeah.
Like if you were kind of an integrated services vendor, you can do theming, apply report themes based upon whoever's logging into your app. So maybe if kind of the customer that was landing on it for you had a green color, you can now say they logged in, I'm going to apply the green theme. Someone else logs in, they're going to apply a red theme.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
dynamic data set binding. There's just so much you can kind of do whenever you get in the pro side of things with Power BI.
Yeah. I do write some Visual Basic, but there's lots of limitations in working in the Excel IDE. So,
yeah.
But yeah, this embedding stuff is really cool and something I'd always wanted to learn more about. But yeah. I think we're over time now, and I've got to go look at 10 houses. We're shopping around, so I think we're gonna wrap up here.
It's good to be back, my friend. Good to talk
back.
to you here as well.
We had a little bit of a.
We'll make sure
Sorry.
We'll make sure we jump back on the stream though.
Yeah.
Kind of on that kind of bi-monthly.
Yeah.
So every other Saturday.
2-week cycle. Yeah, we had a nice little unplanned summer break, but we are ready to get back into it, and we've got some exciting topics. We might even do the requested show about the gateway. As much as I know, it just works always. It lets you do Kerberos, and that means everything about the gateway just works, even when you're not using Kerberos. So, Adam, I prefer games where I can spend 15 hours optimizing my production chains rather than shooters. So yeah, I was up until you woke up this morning playing Factorio. So I didn't get very much sleep. Well,
awesome.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.